All right, let's get started. So I think we need to get started with Tesla out of all of them. Well, really the big three, but we'll get started with Tesla. Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, incredible earnings from all of them. From a qualitative perspective, quantitatively, Microsoft and Meta were a bit better than Tesla. I want to play a small clip on what Elon started off the call by saying yesterday, and then we'll keep going from there. Here's Elon's kind of opening statement on where he thinks the future of Tesla is going.
I see a path. I'm not saying it's an easy path, but I see a path to Tesla being the most valuable company in the world by far. Not even close. Like maybe several times more than. I mean, there is a path where Tesla is worth more than the next top 5 companies combined. There's a path to that. I mean, I think it's like an incredibly, it's like a difficult path, but it is an achievable path. And that is overwhelmingly due to autonomous vehicles and autonomous humanoid robots. So our focus is actually building towards that, and that's what we're laying the ground. We laid the groundwork for that in 2024. We'll continue to lay the groundwork for that in 2025. In fact, more than lay the groundwork, actually, so we'd be building the structure. We're building the manufacturing lines, I'd like setting up for what I think will be an epic 2026 and a ridiculous 27 and 28. Ridiculously good.
You can't say that he doesn't know how to sell his vision. Now, Joseph Carlson here said yesterday, he's historically been rather not a fan of Tesla, but he put out some numbers to make sense of this. If Tesla is going to be bigger than the top 5 companies in the world, the top 5 companies did $335 billion in free cash flow in the trailing 12 months. Tesla did $4 billion. Tesla can't see the nearest real-world AI competitor with a telescope, which is what Elon said. And then he mentions, well, Waymo's doing 150,000 paid robotaxi rides every week. Tesla's doing 0. And then Joseph Carlson is calling a little bit of BS on this idea that Optimus could potentially generate 10 to 20 trillion in revenue, which is what Elon said yesterday. Obviously, if you were doing 10 to 20 trillion in revenue, you would have hundreds of billions of dollars in net income, which means the multiple that you put on that would put your market cap in the 20s of 30s of trillions, which I know sounds crazy. And Elon knows it sounds crazy as well. But nonetheless, that is what he spent a lot of time on the call talking about yesterday. Now, what are my perspectives on this and what are my thoughts? And I know half of you guys probably think these are pipe dreams. Half of you guys think these could be real. Look, I think you have to take the numbers with a grain of salt. Obviously, 10 to 20 trillion dollars of revenue is not coming overnight. However, what is the point of the stock market? The point of the stock market is to bet on future growth and, quite frankly, to bet on potential. And so does Tesla deserve to be trading at 185 times next year's earnings? Probably not from a quantitative perspective. But if you believe in the potential, like, do you think Microsoft could be a $20 trillion company? I don't, personally. I don't think that could happen. Do I think Tesla could be a 20 trillion? Like, if I, like, gun to my head, if I had to pick one or the other for 20 trillion, I would pick Tesla. And I think because people are buying into that story, they're buying into that narrative, that is what's keeping the stock elevated. Because quite frankly, if it was not for Elon doing the pumpy pump that he did at the beginning of the show, or the beginning of his show on the earnings call, which, by the way, he was on Twitter during the earnings call, which Elon's just having fun with this. But he was responding to political memes and laughing while he was on the earnings call. And someone called him out on it because they could see that he was obviously tweeting while he was live on the call. But ultimately, Elon believes that there is that potential. And if Elon believes that there is that potential, that is why the market is getting, or at least some parts of the market are getting excited to buy into that. If that wasn't the case, I think Tesla would be down $100 right now. And Tesla was close. Tesla was down at 368 last night on the initial numbers, because the numbers were bad. Like, they were not good. Missed revenue by 2.5 billion. But Elon gets on the call and he starts waxing poetic, and the street starts to forget about it. This is what Farzad said. Elon responded a 100 emoji to some political meme, and Farzad said, "Bro, get off X, you're on an earnings call." And then Elon just laughs at it. It's just like, it's kind of insane, bro. It's getting to the point where he really does not care anymore about the formalities of an earnings call. It's his world, and he's going to do whatever he wants. Now, this was the one line out of the call. There's a couple quotes that I want to talk about. This quote is the quote that I love the most. Look, I'm a sucker for a good line. Okay, that's how I have all this energy in the morning. There's a good line, and you do a little snorty snort, and then you're good to go for the morning open. But Elon Musk on the Tesla call just now, he says, I know people say I'm the boy who cried wolf, but I'm telling you, there is a damn wolf, and the wolf can drive you autonomously. This line, I mean, I just I come from a debate background. I come from a communication background. I need to get excited when it comes to perceptual dominance. There were times when in my debating career when I would have these like mic drop moments, and I would wait for the judge to see if they would like look up from the notes they were taking, and I could tell, damn it, that line just won me the round. I could tell it. That line just won me the round. This line, I think, won Elon the earnings yesterday. Because it's acknowledging that you are the person that has all these crazy ambitious timelines, and you're the boy who cried wolf, which is crying for this thing that says is going to happen but is never going to happen. And then Elon says, no, there is a wolf, and that wolf essentially can drive you autonomously, aka FSD. I liked it. I like that line a lot. And you could, if you actually go back to the earnings call, the exact minute that Elon begins saying this, which is like within the first 45 seconds of his opening statement, and then he goes into this whole idea that Tesla can be more valuable than the top 5 companies on the planet, you start to see a reversal. You start to see a real reversal. Then we gap up to 413, and then it came back down to like 405. But nonetheless, that was one of the things that was exciting from Elon. And again, I'm experiencing FSD every day, so I agree that the wolf is real. It's just a question of when that wolf is going to result in increased earnings growth. Tesla is the only growth stock in the United States, forget the United States, in the world that is not growing. I mean, I'm sure there's other growth stocks technically that are not growing, but it's one of the only high profile names that is growing negative 8% year over year, trading at a 250 or 150 PE. I mean, it is, what's Tesla's PE? Tesla's PE right now is 150. So, this is why people say the valuation is ridiculous, but if we're betting on potential, then we're betting on something greater than 150 PE. Now, he also gave us a launch date for unsupervised FSD. That is going to be happening in June of 2025. It is also going to be happening in Texas. Elon said this is not some mythical thing. We will be live in the next 5 months. So Elon was very serious about the idea that the age of autonomy is here. He even mentioned that he thinks there will be more places besides Texas where FSD launches by the end of the year. That, I think he's being a little bit too ambitious on. I don't know if we're going to get, he said there's going to be multiple parts of the country that are going to be covered with unsupervised FSD. That, I don't know. There's too many regulatory hurdles there. Texas, they can probably get done. California, they can probably get done. But to say it's going to happen everywhere else or in like even another 20, 30 places, I think it's going to be a little tough. If it happens, it'd be amazing. But I think if they can just get Texas out of the way and show people that robo-taxis are on the road, then that would be an important thing. Final 2 quotes. Elon says, we are seeing significant interaction or interest from other auto companies for licensing or FSD technology. He says, I think the reason for this is because most of them are realizing that without FSD, you are dead. So again, Elon making the argument that FSD and autonomy is going to be the overarching reason for how Tesla creates and generates the majority of its value. And then finally on Optimus, which by the way, I did say yesterday, I think the wild card is going to be Elon pumping Optimus. And I expected a little bit of a pump. I did not expect them to spend almost 7 minutes discussing Optimus in depth, but they did. And quite frankly, the reason they did is because you need something to believe in because the numbers sucked. And Optimus numbers don't suck. They feel like it's the most magical business model in the world if it can happen. And I'm not going to lie, I felt like buying some Tesla as soon as he started talking about this, because one of the reasons I really wanted to begin buying Tesla this year is because of Optimus. It's not real yet, but Elon gave us a little bit of color on this. So he said, right now we are just focused on Optimus doing the most boring tasks in our Tesla factory internally, the stuff that no one wants to do. Optimus is very happy to do all the boring jobs. Our goal is to build a production line that can scale from 10,000 to 100,000 units a month. This is a rough guess, but I think we can start delivering robots to other companies by the second half of next year, which would be incredible if Tesla starts recognizing revenue by the second half of 2026. The street has not priced that in my opinion. And if they're delivering, call it 10 to 100,000 units every single month when it comes to robots. And he says it'll cost us about 20,000 to make them. Demand will not be a problem. Again, Elon making the argument that humanoid robotics are real. The numbers get wonky. This is where you get to $10-20 trillion in revenue. I went through a deep dive on how humanoid robotics can get to that type of a market cap a long time ago. It's not that insane what Elon's talking about 10 to 20 trillion. It sounds insane because it's going to take a hell of a lot of execution to get there. But the demand for this product and the marketplace for the physical embodiment of AI is real. It is out there and companies are working on it. The question is just going to be, can Elon execute to that level? So look, here's going to be the first poll of the chat. Let's see what you guys are thinking, but I think it'll probably be 50-50 on, do you believe in these ambitious goals set by Elon? Because I think we can all be objective here, even the biggest of Tesla bulls, that there's no way in hell this stock would be up right now if it were not for the qualitative assessments that Elon made. There's just no way. Do you believe in Elon's statements? I mean, dude, they missed badly on earnings. Like, this was like we saw the results and I was like, oh, wow, this hasn't, like, Tesla hasn't missed like this in like over a year. Like 2024 had some crappy earnings. This was bad. This was like not good. Now, one thing that was good is that their cost of goods sold came down to be their lowest ever, which was very good, right? Because even with all the 0% APRs, price cuts, et cetera, incentives, they made it come down. But the raw numbers just sucked. They weren't the best. But again, I mean, I'm like, you know, there's a lot of companies out there where valuations are aggressive and expensive, but people buy it for other reasons. And, you know, when you got a cult like Tesla, people are going to buy it and believe in the vision of Elon. I believe in the vision of Elon as well. I don't think it's happening tomorrow. And I quite frankly, I think what's happening is people want to reserve their spot in the Tesla line, because if he's right, and it does play out the way he's playing out. Again, he said 2026 is going to be wild. 27 to 2028 is going to be ridiculous in his words. And 2025 is going to set the foundation for the back half of this decade to be as incredible as it's going to be. If you believe in that, and you believe it's inevitable that FSD is going to work, you believe it's inevitable that robotics are going to become a thing, there is not many companies in the stock market that have exposure to all of that stuff. Amazon kind of has some exposure to that, but it's not at the level that Tesla does. Google, I mean, you got to believe Waymo versus robo-taxis, and I mean, then it comes down to, do you believe in LiDAR technology? Like it gets super nuanced, and what do you believe in from a company that is purely executed on the autonomy front with neural nets, or a company that's using it as a side bet, aka Google? And you've got to ask yourself, what other companies in the world have a TAM as large as Tesla? Even Nvidia, I don't think, has the Tesla type of TAM, even though, to be honest, if Elon's producing 500% more robots year over year, which is what he said yesterday, there's going to be some GPUs that are purchased, and maybe it doesn't only come from NVIDIA, but there's going to be some more demand for NVIDIA from the entire sector. So I do think that will help NVIDIA over the long term as well. But it's Tesla. They've got the potential. They've got the potential. And if you don't believe in that, then you don't buy Tesla and you wait for it to crash and burn. But if you do believe in that, I think that's why Tesla continues to be green right now in the pre-markets. 56% of you say yes, you believe in Elon's statements. 44% of you say no. 30 and a wake up said it's not just about selling bots, it's about bots building bots, ridiculous scalability and gross margins. I agree. It's also about bots building the cars, which would be incredible. It's also about the idea that Tesla uniquely has an AI model that can create the brain for a bot. Speaking of AI models that can create a brain for a bot, let me show you guys this headline real quick, and then we'll finish with Tesla and we'll go to Microsoft and Meta. SoftBank is considering investing into a company at a $4 billion valuation. The company is called Skid AI. And the goal of this company, I haven't looked too into him, but I found this headline this morning. They are building an artificial intelligence brain for robots. And SoftBank's thinking of giving them a $4 billion valuation. Now, why does this matter? Because the fact that other startups are seeing an opportunity in the humanoid robotic space and they're trying to approach it from a software perspective, it shows that a lot of people are realizing demand for this product is real. What's also important about this is Tesla is literally building the same exact brain, or the concept of a brain, with XAI. OpenAI has a bunch of robotic engineering job listings because they're trying to build a brain for their robots via GPT. So if we assume this industry is inevitable, what company in the public markets has exposure to it? Because there's a bunch of startups that have exposure to it, but even OpenAI is not public, right? So like, what company has exposure? Google had a partnership with Aptronic the other day, which is another humanoid robotic startup, which is cool, but like, that's not the Tesla type of exposure where they're literally internally building it. And so we're gonna see how this ends up playing out. But overall, it is pretty incredible to kind of get the vision from Elon. Will it become executed is what you either invest or don't invest for. But Elon pumped it. That's what I got to say. Elon freaking pumped it. And if it was not for this Elon pump, I do not think we would see Tesla stock being green right now. But it is green because Elon pumped it the way they needed to do. It's not a physical brain. It's going to be an AI brain, right? It's going to be an AI brain that's attached into the robots. Essentially a model. They're talking about a model that is meaningful enough. Like FSD has its own model. ChatGPT has its own model. Grok has its own model. Optimus would have its own model that is suited for an actual physical robot to be able to interact in the real world. And that's not going to be easy to build. And that's going to take a lot of GPUs to build. It's going to take a lot of inference training to build. But if it does get built and we're shipping billions of robots in the next 2 decades, I mean, you would think that Tesla takes up a decent amount of that demand long-term as well. Okay, so that's what we got in the context of Tesla. Let's move to Microsoft and Meta. Before that, real quick, we do have some macro data, so let me pull that up. Not that surprising of macro data. It's nothing too crazy that happened, but here is what we're looking at. GDP came in at 2.3% versus at 2.6% expectations. We saw this from the Atlanta Fed yesterday, so it's not like this was too much of a surprise. So a little bit lower than expectations on GDP. Personal consumption came in at 4.2% versus 3.2%, so people are spending a bit more. PCE, again, 4.2%, and then core PCE was at 2.5, so that was a little bit, or that was in line with expectations. PCE on the top line was a bit higher than expectations. Not numbers that really move the markets in any certain direction. Now, trading economics also shows us a couple of headlines. The European Central Bank lowered their key interest rate by 25 bips in January of 2025. This comes after the Bank of Canada also lowered their interest rates. So it's nice to see that more central banks across the entire world are lowering their interest rates. Because hopefully that will get JPOW to eventually lower them, and we'll talk about JPOW in just a little bit. But we do have the ECB and the Bank of Canada lowering the rates, and on top of that, we had the jobless claims, which also came in better than expected. The jobless claims today were about 7,000 of a beat versus what we thought. So they were at 207,000. The market thought it would be 224,000. So actually, that's almost 15,000 better than what we thought we would get. This is good news, right? Because that means less people are unemployed. Now, theoretically, at least a month ago, that would be bad news because that means there's more inflation. But I think the market's kind of gotten over that because they're seeing inflation come down without the necessity to have massive unemployment to make inflation come down. But that is the macro data for today. Jobless claims was better than expected. PCE was in line with expectations. GDP growth slightly lower than expectations for Q4, but we kind of already knew that was going to happen yesterday, so that wasn't too big of a surprise to the broader markets. So that's what we got in the context of macro data. All right, cool. So Meta and Microsoft. Meta and Microsoft. And we'll talk about the other earnings that we had this morning as well. We had MasterCard. Well, actually, let's just take a look at those quick stocks that reported this morning. So MasterCard had earnings. MasterCard is green by 0.86%. Let me pull up their numbers real quick. Let's just read the headlines on those. MasterCard beat on EPS 382 versus 369, and then revenue 7.48 versus 7.38 billion. So a double beat, which continues the trend. Again, we talked about it yesterday. 80% of companies that have reported so far have beat on the top and the bottom line, which is amazing. And they beat by an average of 7%. So no one can say Q4 earnings growth is not really being as strong as what the market wanted to be. Altria Group, EPS was 129 versus 128. That is a beat. So this is a stock that Steve loves a lot. They are down 3%. Now, they were up like 30% last year, so makes sense. They might have been priced for perfection. Revenue was also beat, 5.1 versus 5.05 billion. That's a beat. Mobileye, 13 cents versus 11 cents. That's a beat. 490 million versus 478 billion. That is also a beat. Another double beat. Their stock is down 8%. Don't know why they're down 8%. Might have to do something with guidance. But Mobileye on a double beat is down. Southwest Airlines, which, by the way, speaking of airlines, I don't know if people saw the headline, but the American Airlines flight crashed at a airport in DC yesterday. And from my understanding, everyone on the flight died. About 61 people. It was a commercial passenger flight. There was I believe, either jet or helicopter in the sky that somehow crashed into them. I don't want to share the video because it's pretty graphic, but anyone can find it. And a lot of bodies were having to be taken out of the river nearby. So a Black Hawk ran into an American Airlines flight. 67 people. That was pretty bad news yesterday, dude. I mean, Trump issued a statement. He said, "May God rest their souls." I mean, just no one imagines when they're on a flight about to land that the landing. This is why every time I'm on a flight, and I've been on many flights in my life, when you land, you always just are like, you give yourself a little bit of like, all right, we got here safe and sound. Because even if you're used to flights, you just never know, dude. You never know. Like the fact that humans get into this tube and this tube goes into the sky and the sky goes across the world and then it lands. I mean, it's just absolutely insane that we've been able to to create that level of innovation, but it also comes with risks. And so definitely was some sad news that happened there yesterday, late last night. Southwest Airlines, another airline company, they're down 1.58%. They missed on revenue by a slight amount, 6.93 versus 6.95, and they beat on EPS by 9 cents, 56, or by 10 cents, 56 cents a share versus 46 cents. So the only airline that really did a good job this quarter was United and Delta. The rest of them have been a little wonky with their guidance and with their EPS beats or revenue misses. But JetBlue really sucked yesterday. They were down 20%. But United and Delta, the best of the best, have done relatively strong in the airline space. So that's what we got in the context of earnings here today. Landing and takeoff are the highest chances of a crash. Yeah, dude. And every time, I've had to been on at least like 300, 400 flights in my life. I did a lot of traveling back in high school when I was traveling for debate tournaments. And every time you go up and you go down, it's just, you just never know, right? So you always want to hope that you're in a decent situation. And it's just sad. It's just very, very sad to see some of that stuff happening at the end of the day. Okay, cool. So that was the earnings data from this morning. Meta and Microsoft, let's talk about them. So Meta crushed it, absolutely crushed it. Couple highlights from their earnings call. First of all, they beat revenue by $2 billion. They beat EPS by $2, which is insane, dude. They made $8 a share. I mean, like, what more can you ask for if you're a Meta shareholder, right? Like, literally, what more can you ask for? The most important things that Meta did was that they reaffirmed their 60 to 65 billion in CapEx guidance, which was obviously good for NVIDIA. So NVIDIA was up 2% after hours. We'll talk about why NVIDIA is down right now. But as soon as Meta said that, NVIDIA gapped up to 127. Zuckerberg opened his statements on the call by saying, this is going to be a really big year for AI. I want 1 billion of our users to access artificial intelligence. We have some fun surprises that I think people are going to like this year. The fact that he wants 1 billion people out of the 4 billion people that use Meta, so 25% of their users, to access AI, guess what Zucks is doing? Zucks is doing what Apple should have been doing. Zucks is doing what Apple should have been doing. Apple should have been getting billions of users onto artificial intelligence. And Zucks right here is saying, nah, it's going to be us. We're going to be the ones that introduce the world to artificial intelligence, which to me is hilarious because Apple's kind of dropping the ball on this. We'll see what they say on today's earnings. But Zucks is like, yeah, no, we're not going to drop the ball on this. We are going to continue to make sure that we innovate for the long term, and we get everyone in the world that is using our products also using AI. Now, he also said later in the call that he plans to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in AI infrastructure over the long term. This is another reason that NVIDIA went up last night, because as soon as Zuck said, hey, we're going to keep spending money because we think more compute is important, then the market got excited about what that means for NVIDIA. The exact quote on DeepSeek, this is what Zuckerberg said. He said, some of the recent news, the new competitor DeepSeek from China, just puts into perspective that there's going to be an open source standard globally. And for our own national advantage, it's important that it's an American standard. He said, we take that seriously and we want to build the AI system that people around the world are using. If anything, some of the recent DeepSeek news has only strengthened our conviction that we are focusing on the right things. So, I mean, this kind of put a wrench in the whole DeepSeek is going to take away NVIDIA demand thesis, because essentially the argument was, no, DeepSeek is making open source the standard. That means Meta gets the bid over some of these proprietary models because they have the best open source model and the largest one. And then B, you heard Zucks right there say, we have to spend more because we need to be competitive with China. We need to continue to be at the forefront of technology. This is not going to decrease demand. This is only going to increase demand. So at the end of the day, I don't know why, basically, if you listen to him, he was like reading between the lines. Why is everyone freaking out about this? We're going to need to keep spending. There's no way we're going to have to stop spending the amount we're spending. By the way, Zuckerberg didn't have to double down the way he doubled down yesterday on this thesis. I think, this is my theory. I think him and Jensen are, really cool with each other. And he saw what happened to NVIDIA stock. And he probably, gave an argument that said, yeah, we're going to keep spending. He did not have to say hundreds of billions of dollars in CapEx in AI infrastructure. He could have said tens of billions. And so the fact that he said hundreds of billions, I think he kind of gave a little bit of an alley-oop to NVIDIA and was like, look, we're not going to stop spending from these guys because we need as much infrastructure as we have to have in order to be competitive with AI. And also, Zucks and Jensen have a very good relationship. In the future, when Jensen comes out with the next version that's better than even Hopper after Blackwell, Zucks wants to be first in line, most likely, because he knows that they have the free cash flow to support the ability for them to spend this much. And when they have more and more data centers, if they can fill those data centers up with better and better GPUs, then that's going to be more beneficial for them long term. Now, the one thing that he did say that kind of took NVIDIA down and took Broadcom up is that he did mention that Broadcom, by name, I believe he mentioned, which is why Broadcom was up 5%, is going to get a little bit more of their CapEx spend than before. I'm going to pull up the exact quote from the transcript, but Broadcom right here, 5.78%. I believe they mentioned one of the chips that Broadcom builds as the reason for part of getting some of those hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's why Broadcom was up 5.7%. The reason NVIDIA is down, even after Zucks was so bullish on the idea of CapEx infrastructure spend, is that Microsoft came out, again, had nothing to do with DeepSeek. Microsoft came out and said, we are going to be lowering the rate of growth of our CapEx for fiscal year 2025, or sorry, for 2026. So it's not that the raw number of dollars Microsoft is going to spend on CapEx is going to go down. It's that it's not going to grow at the levels that it grew in 2025. And that first of all, that's obvious. I mean, like, it probably is not, like, if they grew CapEx from 2024 to 2025, I'm just throwing out this number, I don't know if it's accurate, but let's say they grew it at 45%. Maybe they're going to grow it at 35% next year or 25%. That's going to be more dollars, like it's going to be more than 80 billion. It's just not going to be at the rate at which they grew from 2024 to 2025, which I don't think is bearish for NVIDIA. I think the market hears the headline and they think it's bearish, but that's still a lot more money going into the NVIDIA ecosystem. It's bearish for NVIDIA if the expectations for NVIDIA grow at the same rate that Microsoft's CapEx expenditure was growing as well. And I don't think that's necessarily happening if you look at NVIDIA's forward guidance, or sorry, their forward earnings expectations from a PE perspective. So I bought more NVIDIA last night, dude. At this point, I have 350 shares. I think I'm probably going to get to 500 shares. My conviction is growing deeper and deeper. Next week, I want to do a little bit of a kind of 10-minute or 20-minute pitch at the end of the market open on NVIDIA. Maybe we'll do it like next week on like a Thursday or Friday. And because I've been collecting a lot of details in my Google Doc and just doing my own personal due diligence. And I want to kind of lay out my bull case. It'll be good for me to lay out that thesis and, you know, just to have it sort of set in stone for myself. But it'll be good for other people if they're curious about what is the NVIDIA thesis. I think the dip is stupid. I think the dip is very, very stupid when you hear what Meta, Microsoft, Tesla are saying about their overall CapEx. Maybe it's not going to be as big as it was before, but it's definitely not slowing down. And if we're going to be producing hundreds and millions of robots, and we're going to be producing even bigger data centers, as Zucks was talking about, we're going to be doing Operation Stargate. We are going to be having more and more different verticals that the market is going to be expanding into, like FSD and robotics. There's going to be a demand for NVIDIA. I don't think that's stopping anytime soon. We are not starting NVIDIA Daily or NVIDIA Weekly. That is not happening. We have enough of all that happening. But I think it's still very exciting. We got Tanner in the chat right here. A lot of the NVIDIA scares will be cleared up by NVIDIA earnings. Yeah, dude, I did not think I would have a chance to get into NVIDIA at these prices. But if the market's giving me that opportunity, you know, buying the dip is not easy. It was funny because the day NVIDIA fell to 116 and I think I bought it at 120, I was like scared to even swipe up on Robinhood and buy it. And now I'm just like, all right, fuck it, we're buying it. Like that's part of the thing about buying the dip is once you normalize buying the dip, you're like, all right, I'm in, you know, and now it's not that scary. Now, if you're off by a couple dollars, you just don't care. You're like, all right, I have my thesis, I'm in. But again, I would say if Robinhood fell from 50 to 30, I would be buying that dip like crazy because I just know the company so well. So some of the NVIDIA people that I'm listening to, you know, they're like some of the OG NVIDIA investors, they're laughing about this, dude. They're laughing. They're like, this is the dumbest thing ever. And we are like, there were some people I was talking to like, dude, I have enough NVIDIA. I don't need more NVIDIA. But even I'm buying more NVIDIA because this is just stupid. I have enough Robinhood. I probably don't need more. But if Robinhood fell 20, 30% in a day, I would be buying more Robinhood because I just understand the long-term thesis so well. And that conviction is so hard to break that it's easy for me to buy the dip. But I don't know that about NVIDIA. I don't have that same conviction about NVIDIA. So I try to put myself in the people that do have that same conviction and try to understand how they're conceptualizing it. And essentially their thesis is that this is where AI starts and begins. You need to have compute. You need to have that infrastructure. Pat Gelsinger, former CEO of Intel, came out yesterday and said, hey, I'm buying the dip on NVIDIA. Gary Tan, former or the president of Y Combinator, biggest startup accelerator in Silicon Valley, he said he's buying the dip. Perplexity CEO last night said he's buying the dip. I mean, you got a lot of smart people that are intertwined in the world of AI, and they think this is laughable. So take that, you know, to take with that what you will, but it does seem like there is more and more momentum, and hopefully after earnings, a lot of the street clears up their concerns about NVIDIA.